Welcome to Forum 360, a global outlook with a local view. I'm your host, Pat Simons. We're a nonprofit grant and donation funded program that depends on volunteer moderators who present a wide variety of topics. To find out more about us, go to forum360.org. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we are video recording via Zoom. It's a new format, so please bear with us. Today is June 1st, 2020, and the U.S. Census is in full throttle, but the pandemic has thrown some curves in its processes and schedule. Before we talk about the current status and the continuing importance of our responses, I'd like to give a quick review of what the census is and what it does. The decennial census is a constitutional mandate. It is to count everyone, citizen and non-citizen, living in all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and the U.S. territories. Census 2020 is the 23rd census taken every 10 years since 1790 by the nonpartisan U.S. Census Bureau. The data is used to allocate and distribute billions of federal funding dollars for necessary services and factors into how we draw redistricting maps and how many congressional seats each state holds. Census Complete Count Committees are collaborative partnerships between the U.S. Census Bureau and community leaders to coordinate efforts to get an accurate count. Locally, the Akron and Summit County Complete Count Committee is co-chaired by Summit County Executive Eileen Shapiro and Akron Mayor Dan Horrigan. My guest, Whitney Spencer, is Senior Administrator to Executive Shapiro and is representing her in the role of Complete Count Co-Chair. Also with me is Jodie Delamatre, Adult Services Librarian and Ohio Web Library Specialist at Hudson Library and Historical Society. She is currently serving as a member of the Ohio Library 2020 Census Committee. Welcome to you both. We have a lot to talk about, so I'm going to dive right in. Whitney, what kinds of county services receive federal funding, and how does the census impact that funding?
Good morning. Thank you for having us here. So a couple of the ways that Census funds county programs. One is the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is money and funding for housing, community, and economic development activities, especially for low to moderate, those living in low to moderate incomes. Another one is TANF, which is the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, otherwise known as cash assistance. And then how census data impacts our funding services is there are $675 billion that the government is going to distribute based on data that they collect from the census. So if we are unable to receive an accurate and complete count, we are at risk of losing funding that we need in order to continue to provide services to our residents.
What kind of actions is your Complete Count Committee taking to get an accurate count, and how has the pandemic affected your efforts?
So as you mentioned, the co-chairs are Executive Shapiro and Mayor Horrigan from the city of Akron. Our CCC, or Complete Count Committee, consists of 26 community leaders that are respected and trusted with our residents. So, and then branching off of that CCC, we have 19 subcommittees, everything from homelessness to veterans, education, healthcare, minorities. Tried to focus on all of the populations that are especially going to be harder to count, so that way we have voices to reach residents everywhere they go, whether that's as you're riding the bus, or that's you're driving past the hospital or at the doctor's office, or children are getting in the information from schools, or you're at the libraries. Just trying to work with everyone to get those that have the platform to be able to speak about the census, to speak about the importance of the census. There are people that don't fully understand why it's important and how it affects them individually or personally. And you asked how everything with COVID-19 has impacted us. Well, the easiest way to get information out about the census to our residents is where we're planning on using all of the events that our county has. We are a county rich in community events, and especially during the warmer months that we have. So we had, before pre-COVID, we had tables and people talking at events. We were planning on being at the senior summit. You name it, we were hoping to have somebody there. So with that and no events and trying to promote a smaller group setting and just social distancing and staying safe at home, we have tried to become creative with our messaging, whether that's social media, pushing it out more on social media, getting people to be active and engaged on those platforms, emails, newsletters, ask a neighbor, well, you're calling to check up on your friends and family. Have you mentioned the census and see if they've done that? And then, so again, just trying to use the ways that we are communicating now to push census importance of it as much as possible.
It sounds like you're making lots of adaptations or adapting new ways of communicating, as we all have had to do. Do you have any particular contact information that is specific to the Akron Summit County?
Yes.
Complete count?
Yes, so the County of Summit and the City of Akron, we have hired a census project coordinator that works closely with myself and Annie McFadden from the City of Akron to promote census. Her name is Monique Cook, and her email address that you can contact her at is 2020census@summitoh.net. She is working alongside with us, and her sole focus is to support our efforts and to really push the importance of the census. So again, that's 2020census@summitoh.net.
Thank you. And Jodie, what is the compelling interest of Ohio Public Libraries in census data, and how does the funding affect you?
Nationwide, the American Library Association determined that of those billions of dollars disseminated by the federal government, the library, based upon the results of the census, the libraries can get up to $1 billion of that. So that's the financial compelling interest. But additionally, being information-based, a library can act as an institution to fight misinformation, disinformation, and scams. And that's one of the roles that we play. There are several others. We've done a lot of programming already, starting in the fall of 2019 up until March 13th when we closed. We were hosting informational programming to help patrons understand what exactly the census is and is not. We were holding hiring activities for people to get hired by the census to participate in it. We had scheduled 2 months worth of training for census workers. So throughout the country, that's what was going on. We also were setting up computers just for the census taking. And throughout the country, we were having April 1st Census Day activities. There is still a huge digital divide in this country, so not so much in our area, but throughout the county and throughout the country, the public libraries have always acted as a bridge to that digital divide. So we were all gearing up for that as well.
Well, it sounds like the libraries are a major go-to place. People
Yes.
can go to the libraries and get help immediately. Jodie, I have a little different kind of question. What is meant by fair representation and distribution of political power when it comes to census? How does that affect it?
Well, the census, as you mentioned in your introduction, is how we form our government. It's how representatives are chosen. It's how Ohio has been losing the representation because based on our census data, our population, which is what it measures, we have a lower growth rate than other parts of the country. So distribution of power is our congressmen are our voices in Washington. So if we, so that count is very important so that we get as many voices representing us as possible.
And what has also been a big issue for Ohio in the last couple of years was drawing our districts. It helps do that. And I was also thinking that, as you say, the funding issue, we less qualify for funding. And Whitney also brought that point up. So Jodie, I'm sorry, I'm asking you a lot of questions in the row, but I will get to you too, Whitney. When the census says count everyone, do they mean everyone? Why are non-citizens counted?
Because non-citizens receive services. Anything as basic as how many people are in a school building to how many people need roads. Everybody, whether they're a citizen or not, are part of our communities, and our communities have services. And for those services to be properly funded, we have to know how many people are using those roads, using those schools, using those libraries, parks, everything. So it doesn't matter their age, it doesn't matter who they are, where they came from, how long they've been here. It doesn't matter because it's the number of people using the services, the number of people in our communities. And this is a community effort.
Thank you. Whitney, why might there be confusion about who in the household fills out the report and who to count in the household?
I think some families might be unsure of who takes the lead on filling out the questionnaire. As far as who should be counted, oftentimes children are undercounted, especially in communities that are low income. So your family's in poverty, your foster children, your grandparents. Yeah, and you also have multi-generational households. So what society deems as the traditional family, you don't see that as often in the household anymore. It's not just the parents and the children. You have the grandparents and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and extended family. So everyone in the household should be counted from no matter the generation, no matter the age. Babies, newborns that were born April 1st should be counted in that household.
Thank you. Jodie, I saw a report from the 2010 census. That data showed that we have over 100 programs that serve children that are federally funded. Whitney started to allude to this, but the 2010 census tells us that children under 4 were the highest net undercount. There were about 2.2 million children we missed. On top of that, the National Urban League finds that Black children are systematically undercounted in the census at twice the rate of non-Black children. Well, Whitney started this discussion, both of you jump in, but what are some of the reasons that young children get undercounted and how do you address that?
We in library land have been trying to, with information, providing information at the story hours, at any kind of activities in the children's departments. I know, like you mentioned, the Urban League has been involved in trying to reach out. I think Whitney probably can address this more than I can, but though I know that there's a lot of census material that the children's departments have been using to try to reach out to families. And families, there are traditional families and there are non-traditional families, and those lines, even that terminology is not proper anymore.
I also noticed that people, as Whitney mentioned, newborns, people don't think of them yet as people. Also shared custody arrangements, which family takes the count. At this point in time, if you are just now joining us, this is Forum 360 and I'm your host, Pat Simons. We're discussing the 2020 census in a time of pandemic, and my guests are Whitney Spencer and Jodie Delamatre. Whitney, what are some of the reasons that people don't respond or resist responding?
One of the biggest reasons is data privacy, in my opinion. There is a distrust of government, especially right now. So a lot of people fear submitting any information that has to do with them or their family members for fear of retaliation, or who knows, what someone who could possibly get a hold of that data could do to them. But the kind of the other side of that is that the data is kept confidential. So I think, and that's unfortunately something that is not pushed enough to respond to the fear of the response. Another one is some people don't understand how the census personally benefits them. I think some people may believe that the census only funds a few things, not realizing that it's not just for low to moderate income families, it's for economic development, it's for your hospitals, it's for your schools. So there are a lot of reasons which is what we've been trying to do too. There are dozens of ways the census funding benefits every community and every person, and we've been trying to push that information out so that everyone finds something that relates to them, so they understand why they need to fill out that questionnaire.
And I know that sometimes there's concerns about language barriers, but the Census Bureau has addressed that. And besides the forms being sent in other languages, there's also other language explanations through guides and website. And as you say, I think it's reasonable that people have a concern about sharing their personal information. And I was impressed that no government, no organization can get their hands on this information. And it is completely safe. And the people who work at the Bureau take an oath, and they can be served prison time, and they can be fined if they're found breaching that. So I think there's definitely a lot of security, especially with online these days. If people, I think you made a reference, Whitney, to fraud. People should report that immediately. There's scams, fraud, disinformation, and there are ways of doing that. They can contact you as your information you just gave. They can contact the Census Bureau to report it. And there's also a Lawyers for Civil Rights Under the Law organization that will address those complaints.
Could I add a couple things to that really fast? I think it's important to mention that when we're talking about our fear of our privacy or any type of retaliation or repercussions, that there is no citizenship question on this questionnaire at all. There was a lot of conversation, there was a lot of push to get that question on there, but that question did not make it on there. So again, there is no citizenship question. Non-citizens need to respond just as much as citizens do. And then also the Census Bureau will not ask for your banking information. As you mentioned, frauds, they will not ask for your social security numbers as well.
No, and so you should know that if you're asked those questions, that is wrong, and do not answer it.
The library also has some information. We have a website page dedicated just to the census and links to all of this information at hudsonlibrary.org. The other thing, Whitney mentioned that one reason people may not value the census is they don't understand their personal connection to it. And I can tell you, as a librarian, we help patrons use census all the time, and they don't even know that they're getting that kind of information when they're developing their business plans, writing grants. It helps to get demographic information to show that they have a compelling reason to seek grant funding from a foundation, and of course, genealogy research.
Thank you. So basically the form, you were contacted via letter. The form takes about 10 minutes to fill out. You can send the report in now by internet. You can do it by phone. You can also do a paper form in send in. And if they do not respond to the census, Whitney, what kind of follow-up occurs?
So the timeline for the Census Bureau has been pushed back again due to COVID-19. So the enumerators will now be going knocking door to door on all of the houses that have not responded starting in August. Don't quote me on the exact date. I believe it's August 11th, but I know it's around that time frame. That may change. It has continued to change as things with COVID-19 progress, but that's their goal right now because all of the data is due to be collected by October 31st. So again, you'll have an enumerator at your door come August if that response has not been received yet.
Okay, well, that's how serious this is, that we want to get an accurate count. Whitney, there's a webpage on the Census Bureau website that is 2020 census result rates. And anyone, public, can go in there and look at how their community is doing in response. It seems like people are generally taking advantage of the internet reporting, which is impressive. But when I look at, there's some disparities in those numbers. Some communities are up in the 80 percentile in response, and some communities are below the county and state levels. What do those numbers tell you, and how does that direct your activities?
So that right now, well, it shows us what our low to count communities are. So we are actually, I pull the data once a week from that website. I track every community's response rate, and then we compare it to the week before, and then also the 2010 response rate as well. So while we have several communities that are either approaching the response rate from 2010 or have surpassed the 2010 response rate, we also have some areas where we have identified that need a lot of attention. So we have our JS department right now is working on creating an interactive map. So that way the low response communities, we have those on the map. We know what churches or temples or whatever faith-based organization are in those communities, the schools, the convenience stores, just really trying to take a neighborhood approach now to get those rates increased.
So what impresses me is this isn't random. You do track things very carefully, and you know where to target your efforts. Jodie, the pandemic has caused the Census Bureau, as has been mentioned, to request changes in their scheduled timeline. They're working with Congress right now, and those outcomes are pending. You know, the timeline wants to be adjusted and has to be approved. If you were to give a message to the public right now, regardless of that, regardless of the impact of the pandemic, what is the best thing that the public can do to help complete the count?
The best thing is to complete the form in any format that they get. Hopefully, if they haven't done it online or they can't do it online, they still have opportunities to respond with paper. And soon there will be visitors probably coming to people's doors trying to get that form filled out. So be knowledgeable of who the census takers are and who are identified. Know what questions they can and cannot ask, because there could be people trying to scam. But know that the identified census taker is, as you mentioned, a sworn to secrecy and professionalism, and just participate, because we all benefit. It's like voting. It's a civic duty and responsibility that we all share for each other.
Well, I want to thank you both. This has been a great overview of the census update. And so I want to thank you, Whitney Spencer, Senior Advisor to Summit County Executive Shapiro. And you are representing her today as the Census Complete Count Chair, co-chair for Akron and Summit County. And I want to thank Jodie Delamatre, who serves as a member for the Ohio Library 2020 Census Committee. Thank you.
You're welcome, Pat. Thanks.
Thank you.
After today's program, I hope we better understand the importance of an accurate and complete census count. COVID-19 pandemic should not stand in the way of an important civic responsibility. Your responses are protected by law. There is no citizenship question, and no government agencies or other organizations can access or use your personal information. Your timely and accurate census responses directly benefit your family and community through federal funding, redistricting, and congressional representation. Please send in your responses right away. If you need assistance, you can also go to 2020census.gov. This is Pat Simons for Form 360. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.